Hi, I'm Mike Handberger with Tricky Fast Studios, and today I'm going to continue the video series on the inventory system in Cat RPG Builder. In this video, I'll show you how to add affixes such as postfixes, prefixes, and then also other types of attachments to items, how to randomize them as part of loot, and then how to make them actually do something. So, to begin, let's start in the complete game example, which you can find in Tricky Fast Add-ons, Cat RPG Builder, and then examples, and then complete game. So if you open up that scene, that's what we're going to start with because it is everything else that we're going to need. The first thing we want to do is actually create an affix. So we're going to create Cat RPG inventory attachment. So postfixes, prefixes, affixes, sockets are all attachments. They're all the same basic thing. So if you select the attachment here, we get to select what type it is, whether it's a prefix, suffix, socket, or attribute. So really, the main difference between prefix and suffix is where this name modifier goes. So we're going to call this the amazing, and make sure to add a space after it so that what it's going to do as a prefix is if we have an item called sword, this prefix will apply this name before the name of the sword, so it would be the amazing sword. And then the description modifier is just added to the end of this description. We'll just say it is amazing. The next thing we want to do is to figure out what happens when we actually attach this. So basically, when this is attached, it's going to execute whatever actions are underneath it. Now let's just take a second here and rename this to something interesting. Right? So what we want to happen is we want this to add a stat modifier whenever the item it's attached to is equipped in the player's hand. So first thing we're going to do is add a triggered action. So you might want to do it on equip action, but there's no way to do that against the attached item. So what we can do is do a change state action. So if you remember, items have states, and one of those states is on equip. The next thing we want to do is this target set to owner. We're going to set that to targeted, which is going to be, when this is run, that will be the item that we're attaching to. Okay, so when the item's in the equip state, now the equip state is turned on whenever the item's in the character's inventory. So we really want to also check the slot that it's in. So let's add a slot type condition here. And on that, we want to again set this to targeted. And then we want to add a reference name here and add bindable slot. So the targeted in this case is the inventory item, and bindable slot refers to whatever inventory slot it's in. So now we're going to check whether it's right hand or what. So we're going to just say right hand for now. Okay, so now when the player equips the item and it's in their right hand, we're going to do something. And that is apply a stat modifier. Now we haven't really talked about the stat service yet in other videos, but eventually there will be a video for the stat service that you can reference to get more information on how this all works. But for now, let's add a apply stat modifier action and make sure to revert on stop. And we want to apply to owner, but we, again, since the owner in this case is going to be our attachment, we want to add a reference name and go to the owner's owner, which is going to be the player or whoever is wielding this item. And then we need to select the stat. Now the player has a melee damage stat here, and we're going to select that stat. So drag that in. We got melee damage. And now the next thing we need to do is actually add a stat modifier. So this apply stat modifier action will apply any stat modifiers underneath it to the stat that you referenced. So we're going to go cat RPG stats stat modifier. So now we've created our stat modifier. And stat modifier just has operations that it applies to the stat. So let's add one operation. And let's multiply this melee damage stat by 5. Oops, 5. All right. So that's pretty much it for this attachment. So now the next thing we need to do is save it out. So I already have one that's named that, so I'm just going to rename that quickly. Okay. So we're going to add the amazing prefix. Great. So now we have it. We can get rid of it from the scene here. The next thing we want to do is in the inventory service, you'll notice if we were using asset bundles, this wouldn't be something we would need to do. But since we are not using asset bundles, we're going to have to add an available attachment here. Oops. And then drag it in. And that way it can save and load this attachment. All right. The next thing we need to do is we need to add this to a loot table. So we have a loot table already called this chest loot table, which you'll notice that this version is a little bit different from what's in the example. The example has a bunch of other things. I deleted everything except for Bob's sword. You can do that too. And then, so this is an inventory item, loot item. Now, if you notice now, the bottom of this, it has some places to add attachments. So we can add an attachment to this list. And then it wants, so if we were using asset bundles, we'd use the asset bundle name and then the attachment name. But for now, we're just using the attachment name, and we called it the amazing prefix. And let's give it a weight of 1. We only have one thing in here, so it doesn't really matter. We'll say minimum number of attachments 1, maximum number of attachments 1. And that's it. We hit apply. And we should be good to go. We can get rid of that. And let's give it a try. Okay, so I've already gone through the demo level enough to be able to have a sword and an attack thing. We have a bunch of swords actually. Let's get rid of some of these. So I want to mention how the swords in this demo work. If we open up the player and we look at their right hand sword, you see there's an equip action here. So we have the equip state, which is active, and then if we put it into the right hand slot, which we have, then we apply a stat modifier. And you can see underneath the melee damage, there is now a stat modifier to multiply it by 1.1. So, if we were to come over here, say, and break this barrel, this uses that loot table. So now we have 2 swords here. Actually 3, but we're probably not going to be able to pick up the 3rd one. So we'll pick up one. And we will take a look in our inventory. This is Bob's sword. It has the amazing prefix attached to it. So if we go in our inventory, it says the amazing, this was Bob's sword. Doesn't quite flow, but you get the point. And if we click on it, it says Bob created this, you should too, or Bob cherished this, you should too. It is amazing. That was our little addition there. Alright, so now, oops, let's go back to our inventory. So now, if we swap this out, and now we've equipped Bob's sword here, And we should be able to see that our apply stat modifier action is active. And this has its own stat modifier. So you can see under melee damage, we have the stat modifier for Bob's sword by default, which is 2.5. Oops. All right. And then we have the new one that we added, which was 5. So now if we go kill something, we would have some extra damage. Now, let's stop that. If you wanted to add this as an attachment, you could do that as well. Come on. Let's drag this into the scene. Right. We could change this to a socket or an attribute. If we change it to a socket, we would have to go take a look at Bob's sword, which is, oops, over here. All right, let's drag Bob's sword in. Bob's sword has 0 sockets, so we would have to add a socket count to Bob's sword in order for our new attachment to work as a socket, because you can only add a certain number of sockets. Now, I'm not going to show this because we don't actually have an example UI for it, and it did not create one for this video. But in order to actually socket that, you would have to use action RPG inventory. You'd have to use the add attachment or remove attachment actions in order to have the player be able to attach the socket or detach it. But you can use that from your own UI to make that work. And let's just show what happens if we were to set this as a suffix and say of doom. Let's add a space before it. It's very scary. Let's apply that. We can just disable this for now. So the only difference now will be that this is Bob's sword of doom. And let's go grab one here. Let's actually get rid of our inventory. Hang on. Yeah, that's fine. Let's just get rid of that. Let's go create a new one here, or get a new one from this barrel. And this was Bob's sword of doom. It is very scary. See? That's all there is to it. In this video, you should have learned how to create attachments for items, how to add them to loot drops, how to make them actually do something, such as a stat modifier in this case, and then the difference between prefixes, postfixes, sockets, and attributes. So attributes we didn't really go over those. That's just something that's part of the item and comes with it. Those are usually rolled with the loot. Whereas sockets would be something that you would actually apply separately as a player. In any case, I hope you found this video informative and useful. Let us know in the comments if there are other videos or tutorials you'd like to see. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on social media for the latest videos and other news. For more information on Cat or Cat RPG Builder and how they can help you build and prototype RPGs faster, please visit catgamebuilder.com. I'm Mike Handberger with Tricky Fast Studios. Thanks for watching.